Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome everybody to the Monday, September the 8th meeting of Kimberley City Council, held here on the homeland of the Ktunaxa peoples. We have an absolutely packed agenda tonight. I'm not sure whether we should be doing our resolution to go beyond 10 o'clock or not, but I guess we'll see how things progress. We got a lot of ground to cover. So without further ado, Maurice, do we have any late items?
There's no late item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Jason McBain, thank you very much. Councilor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have adoption of minutes of the regular meeting of council held on August the 11th. Mover, please. Councilor Roberts, thank you. Councilor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right, we have a couple of delegations tonight, and we are going to start off with our Kimberley detachment of the RCMP and introduction of our new staff sergeant. What I'd like is to, Dean, if you could take the podium and make an introduction for us.
Thanks for having me come here. My name is Corporal Dean Kletzel. I was covering for Dan until he got into the spot. I'm thankful to be able to introduce our new Sergeant, Dan Biggs. He comes from the Yukon. I'm sorry, already messing up. So you probably want to hear from him more than you do myself, but I'll let Dan come up here and introduce himself and all of his accolades.
All right, thanks, Dean. And while Dan's taking the podium, I just want to thank you for kind of this interim assignment. I know it probably meant double duty for you for the last month or two that you've been doing this, and just want to say thank you for the great job. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Yeah,
I feel like I'd be more comfortable if I saw you on a screen, as that was the last time we talked.
It was, yes.
It was a while ago now. So we're really, really pleased that you have agreed to take this job and take it away.
Perfect. Yeah. So thank you for Dean for kind of doing the interim between Steve and myself. I believe Steve left kind of early July, give or take. So the last, call it 2 months, Dean stepped up, and by all accounts from the emails I've received and speaking with district bosses, has done a great job. So I want to give him a big shout out for taking those reins. Yeah, so Sergeant Dan Biggs, about 14 and a half, give or take, years of service. This is my 6th detachment, so I have bounced around quite a bit, but I have a little guy at home who's 2, and then another one coming in October. So this will be where we plant our roots for a little while. I have family in town, so coming out of the Northwest Territories this was our #1 spot, and it all comes down to timing, and the RCMP is the biggest thing. So with Steve moving on to his next detachment, this opened up my opportunity, and had the interview end of June, early July. And I was selected from that. So want to first say thank you for the opportunity, and it's big shoes to fill out here with Steve, and seems like there's a lot of stability in this role, so I hope to bring that as well. Just from my background, I have bounced around quite a bit, so I did a few years in Squamish. Then I went to Sycamore, so small town policing. Then I went to Surrey, which is our biggest detachment, to the major crime unit down there. Spent some time there, promoted to Maple Ridge. I ran one of our investigative teams, and went over to our drug unit, and then promoted up to Northwest Territories. And the last spot I was in, I was running our plainclothes teams. So we had 2 teams near myself. I was 9 persons in total. So we had a domestic violence sex assault unit. That was a 3-person team, and then a 5-person general investigation team. So shootings, stabbings, everything in that. So I would say in the last 5-6 years, have a lot of experience with say higher end investigations. But community policing was a part of the LNI, being up there. So that was a big thing that we spoke about. You know, in the weeks leading up to the interview that we had, participated in some of the youth bike patrols and so forth. So, you know, I'm looking forward to bringing some, I'll say, knowledge and tackling some things that I have experience with, and then also learning from Dean and speaking with the community about what new priorities are as well. So always up for collaboration and new ideas. So if you guys do have any questions, by all means, dash me down the road. I'll be there as much as I can. So thank you for the opportunity, and yeah, look forward to working with you guys.
Yeah, awesome. And thanks very much for that overview. Council, do we have any questions or comments for Sergeant Diggs? Go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
Was your wife able to find a doctor?
So she has an appointment tomorrow down in Cranbrook. So we just moved. We got into town last Tuesday, worked Wednesday, had meetings on Thursday. The moving truck dropped our stuff off today, and we have our unpack day tomorrow. So we did buy in Marysville. So we are local. But yeah, she'll be bouncing to Cranbrook for her doctor's appointment, and then we'll likely have to give birth limited just because of Northwest Territories. That was our kind of medical center. So just to keep continuity of doctors down there. So we'll have to head up them to the first and then head back. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Roberts. All right, thanks, Dan. Welcome,
Thank you.
and we'll look forward to the first quarterly report
Perfect.
coming up here pretty soon.
Yes, yeah, we were just speaking, and hopefully that slips in just before the birth. So
Yeah,
this all goes well, I will be here back for October 14th. So
awesome.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, our second delegation tonight is the Kimberley Nature Park Society. John, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. And is my presentation up or coming up? I'm going to be quick. This is a formality. I'm here to present and the management plan, the license of occupation, or excuse me, if those of you don't know me, I'm John Henley. I'm president of the Kimberley Nature Park Society. The nature park is 800 hectares right out there, and there's another 200 hectares of Horse Barn Valley, which we have an agreement with the Ministry of Forests to manage that as well. The society started, do I get a clicker here? The society started in 1987, and it's been going basically since then from volunteers, although recently we have had paid coordinators and managers. So we're trying to move up in the world, and particularly with community engagement, et cetera. So the park is, I won't go too much in terms of what the park is, but I just want to remind everyone what the governance structure is. We are under an MOU with the city of Kimberley to administer and manage the license of occupation, which was renewed in 2011. And part of the responsibility of that is to have an updated and approved management plan by the city. And that's why we're here today, is to present the management plan. Everyone has received it, forwarded to it, et cetera. I'd like to also acknowledge Jen McConaughey. She was the one who really spearheaded this. For various reasons, she's left the society, but she has started some many good things. And part of what she did was push this forward and work with the province, et cetera. So we started in 2024 to, I have the, sometimes there we go. I'll just kind of click through them. I'm not going to follow them directly, but.
So John, just say next page and Maurice will change it.
Okay, next page. So and you can go up one page after that. So this is what I'm talking about now, is the governance, and so in The license that we have now that the city holds is a 30-year license. It was first a 10-year. I would guess it was a preliminary license of occupation, which was awarded in 2001. And the members of the society then were directly involved in working with the city to identify the boundaries of the park and all of the areas that would be covered. And that license was renewed in 2011. And it's a 30-year license, and the ministry, it's with the lands, waters, and whatever the whole thing is. I don't remember the name of the ministry, but it was, they've said that basically this license will be in perpetuity unless, there's something happens, but basically so the renewal will be in 2041, I think. There's also I mentioned earlier, an MOU that we have that's extant from 2002 with the city, that this society would be the responsible managers of the park. In 2008, I believe, we added a partnership agreement with the Ministry of Forests through the Rec Sites BC to manage Horsebarn Valley. And so that was renewed for another 10 years in 2021. We also have a special wildlife habitat area that's through I'm not quite sure which ministry it is. I think it's the Ministry of Lands, that protects 41 hectares for the Williamson sapsucker, which is a red listed species that nests in the nature park. So we're responsible for supporting the city and the fire department, et cetera, with following the rules that govern the wildlife habitat area. I'm going to try to do the next here. Okay, next. Okay, man. So the management plan approval process, I basically mentioned it, is we work with Carol Heck at the Ministry of Lands, Water, and Resource Stewardship. And so they have given no objection. So we prepared the draft. We sent it to her. They've given no objection with some comments, and the next step is then to submit it to the city for your approval. And once the city approves, then we take the meeting minutes, we write back to the ministry and say the city has agreed and has approved, and then the management plan is approved. One of the main changes, we can go to the next slide. One of the main changes is there's no expiry date to this. So basically, unless we have only responsibility that we have to the ministry is to report to them, but also if we do any changes to the land, like add a new trail or build a structure, we need to inform them, and that's part of the agreement with them. Other than that, there doesn't need to be another renewal process. So tonight will be probably one of the last times, unless the license of occupation, when that expires in 30 years. So, but basically this is the table of contents of the management plan. It covers all these things. I'm not going to read through it, so we can go to the next slide. Okay. So really the priorities of management are, number one is community engagement. We're really working hard towards interfacing with other land users and stakeholders to help to have some kind of consensus and coherence with the trail use as well as the land use. Trails and access, public safety is very high on our list, as well as we're really deeply steeped in natural history. Really the tenets of the park is conservation. It's not recreation. Recreation is kind of our third pillar. Conservation and education is sort of the main deals. So we work with the schools, we work with the community, we have guided hikes. We do many things to help bring engagement and recruit people into the society itself. So there are some special management areas that we're particularly have highlighted in the report or the plan, and you can go to the next slide there. And these are features that you probably know about: Limers Lake, Sunflower Hill, Myrtle Junction, the Wisa habitat, Horsebarn Valley, and the margins of the park. Margins of the park are actually particularly important because that's where they interface with other land users and so we try to keep monitoring that. And so these are areas that we've have particular focus. Next slide, please. So we've basically streamlined and reduced the need for ongoing updates. Like I said, we've shifted action items to our strategic plan. Some of you may know is last year we went through a strategic plan exercise supported by CBT. We now have a three-year strategic plan which identifies different activities, and we work as a society to prioritize those activities, to write grants, et cetera. And it has to do with new projects, maintenance, et cetera. So we have many things going on, and if you're curious, the website is full of information about that. Okay, next slide, please. So we have a number of policies that we have approved, and this is the list here. The procurement and privacy and code of conduct are quite new. We did another CBT advisors program this summer to enhance our governance. So now we're working through many aspects of good governance, and that has to do with our committees in terms of reference and roles and responsibilities to try to be more, I guess, not necessarily rigid, but have a good framework for running the society. And it's something that we didn't have before. It was kind of loose, but now we're trying to make it more structured. Next slide, please. Of course, some of the main issues that are mentioned in the plan, particularly our awareness of non-human aspects of the park, and balancing conservation and education. Those are really the two really important ones. It's a lot of times new people come to town and they think that the Kimberly Trail Society is the same as the Nature Park Society, and we're trying to change that because we really want people to understand that really our whole mission is conservation and try to understand the impacts of human use, as well as to help to protect, some of the unique features and wildlife that we have there, because it is quite diverse. And the first slide, you can see that there's we're continually cataloging a species, and there's thousands of species that have been identified, and we have at least 2 red listed species. That means that they're really rare. So also we're responsible for, and the city is responsible for, invasive species, and to try so we're in the process of developing an invasive species management plan. And also, just as an aside, we have reached an agreement with Kiefer Environmental to do an environmental assessment of the park. And they've been gracious enough to work with us to help us to write grants, and we've been working 1.5 years on this to set out some of the areas that will be looked at with ground truthing and using environmental. I'm not really up on the lingo with it, but basically we'll have a good understanding of what's there, what's unique, and then the second phase will be happening as well. We're excited about that because it's a big contract. It's over $60,000, and we have never come anywhere near that as a society. So, but we've been working with them. They've been very good at saying, okay, we know you don't have the money, but we're willing to help you to apply for the money, and what money we get, we'll put it toward this, and it's quite good. So, and then the final slide is the next steps, which are approval by the city and then register with BC, Lands BC. So then there's a thank you slide at the end. If you go to the end,
Excellent.
which we can see some of our great volunteers. We built a boardwalk this summer in Horsebarn Valley. So if you're ever in there, we did a lot of elbow grease, and it's quite impressive. So any questions from anyone?
Awesome, John. Thank you very much.
Did I do it within my time?
Close.
Close. Okay.
Council. questions or
Anybody have
comments?
questions?
So we will be doing this kind of the approval a little bit later in the agenda, John.
Okay.
I want to thank you and the rest of the society for all the work that you have done specifically in putting this management plan together. That was a lot of work, and
Yeah.
very detailed. And something that I'm sure I can speak for all of council and say thank you very much for all the dedicated effort on that.
So there's two more things I'd like to say. I'd like to introduce two of my colleagues on the nature park. This is Sharon Moorcroft. She's new on the board, and Laura Duncan has been on the board since I've been on the board. So, and welcome. And also I want to thank Sue Cairns because she's our liaison with the city. That's part of our responsibility. And the city's responsibility is to assign us a counselor to join our meetings and understand what we're doing. And thank the council and mayor for agreeing to Sue for another year. So thank you very much. Any questions for anybody?
That's it.
Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you very
John.
much.
Thank you.
So we'll be in touch.
All right, the next item on the agenda tonight is actually this would be a third delegation, I guess, although I wasn't looking at this as a delegation as much as a long-awaited report on the ICE feasibility strategy. So I think we have Tim Reed. Hi, Tim.
Hi, how are you? Very good. Thanks for the opportunity tonight.
Yeah, good. Well, as I mentioned, this is kind of a long-awaited conversation that council has been looking to have. And we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Take it away.
Thank you to council for the opportunity. As you said, my name is Tim Reed. I'm the owner and president of a business called OCL. We have offices in Regina, Edmonton, and we're in the process of opening up in Calgary. We're proud to partner with Falconer Brown, based in Vancouver, on this exercise. And today's a bit of an update on where we are and hopefully to seek your approval to talk to some good folks in the community to see what they think about the assets. In terms of the process that we followed, I'll do my best to stay on time, but I know that there's some pieces that we want to highlight. We started this exercise by looking at background material, looking at a strategic alignment with the documents you already have in place. Spent some time doing our own findings to understand your operations and looking at some options that we could consider. We came down to 3 options that we wanted to highlight. We haven't taken an opinion on them at this point, although we thought they were valuable for everybody to be aware of. And talking about pricing, and then ultimately providing you with an update before we do our report. I do want to acknowledge that we've been really privileged in this exercise to work with 2 of your team members very closely, in Nick and Dean. Both have been incredibly transparent and responsive to our requests, which always makes things so much easier. We talked a little bit about some of the strategic documents, and we always take the approach of working from the top down. Obviously, the Kimberley OCP that was generated in 2018, your corporate strategic plan, the rec master plan, and then the ICE facility strategy that you had in 2020. We really found an ability to move forward on 4 key themes. Number 1, financial leadership and sustainability, environmental stewardship, connected and engaged visitors and residents, and then reconciliation and decolonization were how we tried to approach our evaluation. Probably don't need to tell you a whole bunch of your facilities because you spend more time in them than most, hopefully. But obviously, the Kimberley Civic Center, the Marysville Arena, and the Kimberley Curling Club were the 3 amenities that we focused on. Kimberley Civic Center was built in 1962, had some expansions in 1917. Marysville was built in 1974 with some additions and investment. And the Kimberley Curling Club was built in 1963 and received some additional investments. We did some overview of your demographics compared to some similar sized communities. It was our initial first step. Then we looked at ICE facilities and ICE amenities and comparable communities to yours. We looked at, sorry, I'm going to bounce back one. What I did want to highlight on this from a comparable community standpoint, when we talk about ICE amenities, not curling, you are in a unique situation where you provide 2 community arenas within your community, which is something that we don't see in many of the other comparables. So you are in a service ratio that is perhaps stronger than we've seen in other communities. When we look at indoor ICE amenities and the facility and the comparison, what we try to highlight is the population.
Tim,
Yes.
can I interrupt for just a sec?
Sure
You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, I guess that would help, wouldn't it? It was such
Yeah,
good
please.
info. My
We
apologies.
do have the presentation. We do have the presentation here in front of us, but it would be helpful if
Nope, I thought it was, so I'm going to try to do this one more time. You would think after years of doing this, we'd be better at it. Can you see it now?
yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to bounce back Fairly quickly, in terms of the demographic summaries provided in there, we'll give a bit of a summary. What I did want to highlight, however, is your provision of arenas, indoor arenas for your population. We always look at it a bit of a service provision to say how many arenas do you have per population. What I did want to highlight, you provide essentially one arena for every 4,000 residents today, which is one of the more positive service ratios that we saw in comparable communities, with the average amongst other comparable communities being about 5,300 or 5,400, which means that your residents would have a greater access to ICE services. From a curling amenity standpoint, I would say the highlights of this is from an average year of construction. Most curling facilities in Canada are relatively aged, certainly in BC they are. And in terms of your population to sheets, you're almost identical to other communities, although you do have 6 sheets where the average number of sheets in other curling facilities sits at 5. We had an opportunity to speak with your financial team about the financial performance of your facilities. I want to highlight that we looked from 2022 to 2024, but what we tend to focus on is this number, which is your cost recovery ratio. So for every dollar that you earn or that you spend, how much of that do you recover? Most of us will recognize that community recreation is not a profitable endeavor, and I'm sure you as council deal with this annually at the budget period. But what I will say is part of the goal is to improve your cost recovery. And so right now, your cost recovery sits around 50% across your 2 indoor arena facilities, which we would suggest would be okay, although there is opportunity within it. Some of the facts that we found when we looked at your community, and I'm not going to go through all of this because you know it, is you're a very large geographic area. Your population density is somewhat lower than other communities, but you are facing growth that is well above the norm. And so you are facing the headwinds of the pressure of how do you service a community that's growing quite rapidly. From a curling facility, we would say that you provide to your community in a very comparable fashion to other communities of like size. That being said, you would have 1 more sheet than most. In terms of your arena facilities, what we wanted to highlight is your service provision is significantly better than other facilities that we compared. And I would say you're significantly ahead of what you would see in the BC ratio, which is 1 arena for every almost 17,000 people. You provide a ratio of 1 arena for every 4,000 people. I don't think there would be any surprises in terms of what we have taken away from your facilities as you're battling age. I think you've done a wonderful job in maintenance. You've done what you spent or you can to upkeep. But if we were to look at some of the averages that we would see from other communities, your number of seats and your number of amenities for fans, guests, spectators, and sport user groups is slightly lagging behind what we would see in other communities. Your hourly ice rental rate is at the higher end compared to other communities. And otherwise, your cost recovery sits at 50%, as we said. And we generally believe there's opportunity in that. 2 to 3 key factors normally drive how you perform. One is your hourly cost, your mix of ice between adult and non-adult or youth user groups, the utilization, how much of your ice is used, and then your operating costs. We had the opportunity to sit down with your senior leadership team and talk to them about strategic positioning and how they wanted us to approach this. There was a couple key things that we wanted to highlight. Number one was the vision that they asked us to approach this strategy was we want to be the best ice experience this side of the Rockies. From a mission standpoint, to build strong community through healthy lifestyles, active participation, inclusive and welcoming environments that is financially and environmentally sustainable. And when we asked them to weight the priorities around how we advance this strategy, they came up with 5 key categories: financial performance, maximizing utilization, greater community impact, enhanced sense of place and civic pride, and lastly was environmental leadership. It didn't mean that there wasn't other things that they asked us to focus on, but as we put a weighting scale to this is how essentially it performed. From a current state standpoint, we had the opportunity to partner with our design partners in Faulkner Brown, and they did a review of your amenities. Obviously, from a building site standpoint, we looked at your Rotary Drive site, and we looked at the Marysville Arena site, and we looked at the curling site. Really, what we found was fairly significant. When we look at the Civic Center first, and I know there's a lot of content, And so what we'll do is we'll highlight it into three key categories. There's really three things in the Civic Center that are noteworthy, and I think this has been highlighted in previous work and then once again solidified or made more current. There's some code issues that have to be addressed if you have major renovations. There's accessibility issues to the facility, and there's some concrete and structural issues that need to be addressed. When we look at the curling club and the curling facility, there's really a handful of things that we wanted to highlight in our report. There will be more detail, but obviously this is just an update. Number one is the plant and the refrigeration system. The drainage around the site. You have some roof and seam issues as the buildings were integrated. And then the spectator and the slab experience is something we wanted to note. When we look at the Marysville Arena, probably four key things that we wanted to highlight for you as council. One is the envelope of the building and the roofing structure is nearing end of life. There's some plant, slab, and compressor pieces that need to be managed. The site itself has some drainage challenges and some access challenges, and that makes accessibility a challenge for the Marysville site. We did have the opportunity to meet with your stakeholders, and so we spent the best part of a day meeting with your key stakeholders. And what I would say is they really grouped their themes of their feedback into three key categories. Number one, there was an understanding that the infrastructure that they get to use regularly is aging, and they recognize that budgets are tight and there's only so much investment that can be done. I think they also highlighted the fact that the amenities, some of the amenities are out of date and lagging behind. They highlighted an opportunity around scheduling and ice time demand. The scheduling process highlighted the fact that the team that is there is wonderful, responsive, and engaged, but there may be opportunities to improve it, particularly to ensure that you have a higher degree of utilization. Then the last piece that they highlighted was really the functionality and the user experience of the building, given the age, could be enhanced going forward. Some additional comments that were shared were around the operational uncertainty and governance. This really related, I think, to some of your user groups that have been have been trying to manage the challenge of the ebbs and flows of their growth, but also understanding what will the future of these facilities be and how can they plan accordingly. And then the last piece was, how do we compete with everybody else as they're modernizing their amenities? And how do we find facilities that will represent our community for the next generation? There's a fair amount of comments in here, but I think generally the summary was your community user groups understand the situation of your aged assets. I think they're willing to work with you, and they're very interested in ensuring that everybody has success. We provided some feedback comments in there that we thought were some of the more prevalent ones that you may want to consider. We won't work through all of them because I think they're summarized in the overarching themes. We did want to highlight a few of the survey feedbacks that we asked folks to respond to. And I want to highlight the fact when we asked your user groups, do you use ice time outside of Kimberley due to lack of availability? 100% of all respondents said no. And so what I would highlight to this is it either highlights that you're providing too much ice or you're servicing your customers and your community in a way that they need. Normally, our experience, having done this many times, is when you're in a high demand of ice, you see community user groups moving out of the community. You don't seem to have that in your community, which I think is a strong reaffirmation of the service levels that you're providing. When we asked them how satisfied are you with the following aspects of your current arenas, probably 4 highlights, and I think they're around the same themes that we've already acknowledged: dressing rooms, seating and spectator areas, accessibility, and storage space would be the 4 categories that they suggest that there's areas for improvement. Overall, how satisfied are you with the current condition of ice surfaces? Sits at about 60%. I don't want to suggest that's negative. Having had the privilege of working in many recreational arenas right up to the NHL, user groups are always incredibly critical of ice. I think there's some opportunity in this, but I wouldn't be discouraged by this result either. I think it just highlights the fact that there's some potential to be better, and I think the team has acknowledged that as well. And then lastly, when we ask them about potential growth in the future, 60% of your user groups suggest that they will see growth as they move forward. We worked with the team on some key decision-making strategies and tried to highlight it in this table. Number one was, is there a need for 2 facilities? And so we looked at the financials, we looked at the utilization, we looked at the user groups. Our general perspective was, although your service ratio is incredibly positive for ice user groups today compared to averages, you do find yourself with a growth threshold and the privilege of having 2 arena facilities today. So our belief was there is a need for 2 ice surfaces in the city of Kimberley. Do you need to maintain the curling club? In their meetings that we had with user groups, and I think based on the research that we've seen, is you are a community that is rebuilding their enthusiasm around curling. I think there's strong management there. I think it is a wonderful place for new members of the community to come and meet people. And it is a sport that allows accommodations for all ages and all physical abilities. Do you need to modernize and maintain your services? Can you modernize current infrastructure and maintain the service levels? Part of the balance with aged facilities that we wanted to highlight is if you do want to improve your facilities, you'll have to be incredibly cognizant of using your downtime. But most likely, given the scope and the scale, you will find yourself in a modernization scenario where you'll be impacting user groups. Either you'll have to take the ice out earlier in the spring, or you'll have to put it in a bit later in the fall, but you'll have to be mindful of that. And can you maintain your services if you choose to build new? If you choose to introduce a new asset into your portfolio and then phase out or decommission an asset, you would find yourself in a position that you could maintain services. And so what that led us to was really exploring 3 options that we wanted to present. And I want to be clear that we don't have a recommendation, but we have good information. And we wanted to talk to the public about this and really why we wanted to present to you more quickly. There's 3 options that we looked at. Option number 1 was let's renovate what we have. Option number 2 was a blended approach of renovating and upgrading what we have and replacing the Marysville Arena. And then last one was, if money was no object, appreciate the fact that it is an object all the time, what would it cost to replace the amenities today that we have? Option number 1, which was a renovate option. And so if you took the laundry list of renovations that we're about to walk you through, that would allow the Civic Center and the Kimberley Curling Club to compete for the next generation, essentially, and to be assets that would be reasonable in standards to what we would see in other communities. The renovation cost for the Civic Center would be about $32 million. And the renovations for the Kimberley Curling Club would be about $14 million. If you were to upgrade the Marysville Arena, it would sit at about $18 million worth of scope of work based on today's valuations and value for money. And so we'll break that down. And so in the next slides, and I won't go through all of this, but what I would say is essentially if you want to have a performance arena, a competitive recreational arena, and a great club curling facility that allows you to host various events, this is what we suggested the renovations. And so we've provided a list of what renovations could be considered. What I would suggest is this list highlights essentially the first bucket are the things that you really do need to consider. The second bucket are the things that you should consider. And the third bucket would be the things that you need to plan for in the future. And so we've broken down some of those amenities and tried to list essentially where the numbers would be in the facility and what options would exist. The team at the city had asked us to essentially sequence it. So it was a bit of a shopping list. So you could pick what you liked, unless it was life safety issues, obviously, and you could plan for it in the future. We did the same thing with Marysville Arena in terms of the renovations and the opportunities that would be there to modernize that asset. Once again, the 3 buckets, the must-haves, the you should-haves, and then the things that would be valuable planning. And once again, each of those items are linked to some of the drawings. We did the same thing with the curling facility and suggested the upgrades based on what our facility assessment was and prior reports, and essentially said, here's an overview of what you should be considering. Those items, if you chose to do them all, and I'll bounce back to it, would generate the pricing that you've seen. So you don't have to choose to do all of them, but we did want to give you a detailed list of if you were to upgrade all 3 of your amenities to what we would suggest a modern day standard would be, that would be the pricing associated with it, and these would be the steps that you should take. The second option was a blended approach, and really driven by the concept of how do we maintain their service levels and how don't we take an ice sheet offline for a period of a year or potentially beyond. What we did speak with about the team was the idea around clustering your amenities. And by clustering your amenities, how does that provide greater value for the community, greater commercial opportunity, greater tournament hosting value? And there was a concept where we thought you could rebuild the curling club and the recreational arena and then upgrade the Civic Center. So you'll notice that the Civic Center upgrades are exactly the same number. We're suggesting the exact same sequencing. But from a phasing potential, we think there is an opportunity to rebuild the curling club and the recreational arena adjacent to the Civic Center on some of the land and space that's there. Obviously, that would be a planning position, and that would free up the land that was available at the Marysville Arena. And so it does consider the cost of returning this to decommissioned space and usable land. What it would do is it would essentially embrace all of the pieces of option one for the Civic Center. It would propose a new NHL-sized ice, a spectator seating, 4 dressing rooms, lounge, and concession space in the new proposed arena, and it would work with the curling club. Curling club would be maintained at 6 sheets. It would have spectator seating, it would have access to the lounge, and it would have a larger building footprint to support storage and equipment. The last option that we explored was, what if you were to build it all new? And I think this is probably the piece that will highlight the value of the assets that you have. And I don't want to suggest that you don't know, but it's always shocking to me every time we get a cost consultant to do pricing. And so what I will say is the design team came up with the options, and we brought an independent cost consultant in to provide a detailed breakdown. If you were to build everything new, a new performance arena or the replacement of the Civic Center would cost about $100 million. A brand new curling facility would be about $30 million if it was essentially standalone, and a recreational arena would sit at about $73 million today. This would only be able to happen at the Marysville site, given the land and how it would be assembled. And then you'd have the ability to clear the existing site for future community uses or commercial uses. We partnered with JBA, who is our cost consultant. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want to highlight it just so that council can understand essentially what it means. The pricing was done in June 2025 dollars. So everything that you see is based on June 2025. There was an allowance of 5% per year built into some of the budget forecasts. And that said the fastest that you could go would be 2027, which is what drove these numbers. That being said, every year you go down the road and you see this on all your assets, the cost of construction continues to escalate, and it's been fairly extraordinary coming out of COVID, and I think it's been maintained in many ways. We haven't seen it stabilize. These estimates are considered Class D estimates, so plus or minus, they could go up or down by 15 to 20%. And really what we've done is they're good square foot estimates, and the cost consultant was able to generate some assumptions based on the amenity type. Option number 1, here's the detailed breakdown of it. Option number 2 is included for those that would be interested. And then option number 3 would be the same, I think. From a completion of our work, sorry folks, I was trying to get it to advance here. From a completion of our work, there's really 3 things that we would like to do before we moved on and provided a final report. One is we'd like to talk to the public. And we'd like to get a position from the public of how they value these facilities and the role that they play within their community experience. And so we've been working with the team to commence a kickoff of community engagement that we believe will last at least 30 days, starting in mid-October. There'll be some on-site open houses, and we will follow that with a community survey and engagement. We need to do the business modeling on the operations of these various facilities. And we need to present you with a final report. And so today was really an update of the process that we've taken. We wanted to share some of the options that we're considering, and we thank you for the opportunity to present.
All right. Pardon me. Thanks very much, Tim.
Thank you.
I'm sure we have a few questions or comments from Councilor McBain. Why don't you start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Very detailed report, at least at this level. I guess this could be a question for you, Tim, or for staff. I guess just one, before I get to my question, one commentary that I have that with respect to renovating the Civic Center, there was highlight in there about the glue lamps being not up to code anymore, and those would need to be replaced. The one challenge there is it does not improve any sight lines. If you're putting the glue lamps back in, all those top rows are essentially the same way they are now, and that's my biggest pet peeve with the Civic Center. Did we take into account the potential for off-season revenue, meaning, or off-season use, meaning, potential for indoor soccer, potential for lacrosse, potential for pickleball, these types of things that are, I guess, non-winter related arena activities, where I see definitely some challenges in the renovation space, but maybe not in the new space. Is that something, Tim, that you take into account when you're looking at these facility, either rentals or upgrades?
Yeah, through the chair, I think it's a great question, and it's actually something that we'll provide in detail through our business planning. But I actually think it's one of the opportunities that you do have. Part of the challenges with your existing amenities is just because of some of the structural issues that you see, not super easy to transform them, not easy to move things in and out of them. And from an entertainment standpoint, it's not like you can put a bunch of things hanging from the rafters that you might do in other mid-sized arenas in other communities. And so we had a very lengthy conversation with the team about how do we improve the 50% cost recovery. And I do think, to your comment, there is opportunity around other sports, off-season use, as well as bringing things like entertainment into certainly the Civic Center or your large arena. The other piece that we highlighted with the team is, and I should have spoke to it, but it was in the notes, is there is a considerable opportunity around sport tourism, particularly in communities like yours. You're such a wonderful destination for most of us that are looking to escape. If we can possibly, go take in my case, my U11C hockey player to a place that we can hang out and maybe do a little bit of skiing or hiking, that's a win all around. And so how can you combine a tournament experience with, some of the great recreational leisure activities that you have in tourism ones? So we will do it. It'll be built into the business model. We have talked about it with your team. It is an opportunity that is challenged right now just because of the cost of converting your existing facilities. But we think you can incorporate it into either a renovation or a new build.
Further to that, Mr. Mayor, really appreciate that last point that you brought up, because I think, and I'm not sure if it's on the list, but Canal Flats was an excellent example of what you just described, where, I mean, their whole base right now is out of town usage, and they're drawing a lot of people to their community through tournaments, and then in the neighboring communities having ski hills and other amenities nearby. So really glad that you brought it up, because that's an excellent case in point that to me is an opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. Maybe just to comment on that, Canal Flats came up often in our discussion with your user groups as an example of we should be doing more things like this, and we should be embracing sport tourism, which is why I highlighted the point. So it was certainly a message that was registered loud and clear from community user groups.
Thanks, Councilor McBain. Go ahead, Councilor Cairns.
Thanks, Tim, for the presentation. I'm coming from a non-hockey person, and so my interest would be in kind of how does this. I'd love to see it, and I realize your work is in the ICE strategy, and I am really interested in how this fits in to our broader community center approach. And I realize, that's a separate topic. But I think that there's a really critical need to kind of bring those pieces in as we move forward. And so, when I look at this, I think ice is expensive, and hockey is an expensive sport. Curling is separate. I know curling, as you mentioned, provides accessibility for a broader range of users, where I see hockey as really addressing a segment of our population. So for me, I'd really like to see a high level of cost recovery, and kind of with the goal of maybe like 75%, somewhere in there. So those are a couple of comments for myself. When I look at the user groups, you've got the hockey users, Purcell Collegiate, speed skating, then there's the curling community. Just wondering about the figure skating club. Are they still
Yeah,
So
they were one of the participants and very active, and I would suggest growing from a community
Okay.
standpoint. Feedback groups.
Okay. Great. So, yeah, so those are, that, that's some of my thinking. I also, when I think about, so when you go out and you do your broader engagement, I just wonder how you will be engaging with those, with non-ICE users to get a broader reflection of how people in our community and visitors to our community, how we look at how we actually allocate the resources that we have available to us. And I also think about flexible space and how it can be adapted to changing needs over time. And I also think about changing community needs, like how do we provide for community needs in cases of emergencies and extended power outages, heat, smoke, drought, cold. Those kinds of things in the longer term sometimes are part of arena facilities or community centers. And so, yeah, these are things that come up in my mind. And I guess another thought that comes up too is that rather than going to one location, which probably has its, its efficiencies, because our community is really spread out, it's really nice having facilities spread out as well. So those are my comments for now. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cantz.
Maybe I can just
Councillor
offer,
Roberts.
through the chair, can I just have for maybe 3 comments on that?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Tim.
I wanted to reassure the council member that part of our engagement will look at alternative uses. And so we'll ensure that if there's voices that aren't ICE users, that there is a place for them to speak to their priorities and what's important to them. You've done some wonderful work in the past on your recreational master plan that I think have highlighted amenities, but it will be a good opportunity for us to once again validate those voices and present something to you that suggests if ICE user groups aren't a priority, here's some other things we should think about. I do really want to highlight your comment on emergency preparedness of these buildings. Having had firsthand experience in hosting thousands of displaced people because of emergencies, it is something that there's funding streams available for, but also I think it is I think it's a really prevalent, unfortunately, comment that how do we use our recreational spaces as emergency facilities. I think it's a great comment. And then to your point on clustering, I really think there is a strategy in that has to be evolved. For every 8 hockey teams that you bring to your community, it generates $200,000 in economic impact. And I think when you pull your arena facilities together, the truth of the matter is 2 arenas that are close to each other become 16 hockey teams, and you go from $200,000 in economic win in a weekend to $400,000 economic win in a weekend. So clustering has advantages, not only locally in terms of the commercial aspects, but it has disadvantages to your point where people are now driving, across the community. Average drive time in Canada to an arena is 43 minutes. You're incredibly fortunate in your community to have 2 facilities that accommodate. And so I do think that that's one of the pieces that strategically your administration and yourselves, that feedback is really valuable. What do we want to do? Because there's pros and cons to keeping them together, and there's pros and cons to moving them apart.
Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been an entertainer for a large part of my life. And being an entertainer is an interesting place to be because you can be all alone and think you're an entertainer, but you're not an entertainer until you've got an audience. And there's a lot more audience members paying to see an entertainer than there are entertainers. And that's the nature of sports. The sport, the athletes, the teams, the skaters, the people that are doing that activity are just a few. The people that appreciate it are the many. And so when you're talking about the ICE facility, you're not just talking about the players or the people that are learning how to skate. You're talking about all those people that appreciate that activity, the ones that are going to pay for a ticket to go to see that, and not just a ticket, but many tickets because it's a season. And so I think one of the things you can't get lost on is just that activity. The same thing is true whether you're creating an arts center or a civic center where they're going to play badminton. There's just so many things that are involved with it other than just the actual activity of this ice rink itself. And so you have to really expand your thinking to what will the community do with it, not just what the skaters will do with it. If I may.
Great comment.
Thanks for those comments.
Excellent comment.
Councillor Dunnaback.
Yeah, I just have a question. I wonder what the life expectancy is of, say, the Grandioso plan of like $100 million project versus retrofitting what we have and maybe adding on, therefore being a little bit more environmentally friendly and possibly less impact, if that's ever being a part of the equation at all. And yeah, how long it would, what its lifespan would be my biggest question.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, one great question once again. And so traditionally a new build facility works on a lifespan of 50 years. I don't know that that is the right decision, but it is normally how you approach a new facility is on a 50-year life cycle, given that the facility at that time will need to be changed or frankly will be end of life. And we see many buildings across the world that have outlasted 50 years. We're just not particularly good at that in Canada, to be honest, at maintaining some of those great buildings. It's actually one of the pieces that we heard often from the community was there is a real emotional attachment to the Civic Center being a building that many people have experienced for a generation. For our study, what we tested was a 50-year lifespan for the new builds and a 25-year minimum lifespan for any renovations. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't extend beyond 25 years, but just to answer your question, anything that was new was built for a 50-year period, and anything that we suggested we would renovate, we had a minimum requirement of lasting the next 25 years. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't go beyond that, but the minimum threshold was 25 years.
Thanks, Tim. We're hitting 65 or thereabouts. And still under consideration is renovations. So
Absolutely.
for planning purposes, I get the 50, but you know, realistically, we do have, depending on materials, how it's built, and you know whatnot. It's got a long lifespan. Further, I've got I guess a couple of comments, if I could, Tim.
Please.
So while our ratios look really good compared to other communities, in particular the larger communities, with 9,000 people, the population becomes a factor. In other words, if you need 2 ice surfaces and you've only got 5,000 people, you're going to have a really, you know, kind of a bad ratio. Fact is, we got 9,000 people and we need 2 ice surfaces. And so the cost of that, carrying that for a 9,000 person municipality is really heavy. I look at, you know, depending on the last 2 options here, those costs far exceed, and in one case, more than double the cost of our new wastewater treatment plant, you know, which we've been kind of killing ourselves to finance, just to kind of put that in perspective.
Yeah.
The other thing about utilization, everybody wants prime time. And I know a few years ago, when we had to, I think it was when we were looking at the new ice plant in the Marysville Arena, quite a number of years ago, everybody wants prime time and nobody wants to be late at night or early in the morning. And prime time is just a luxury that I don't think we can afford. Most other communities don't afford that. I'm not sure why that standard needs to be applied here as well. So cost recovery, another comment and a question. So right now, our cost recovery is 50%. But if we put a new facility or facilities in place or even upgraded, the cost recovery to get to 50%, if you look at that business model, is going to be way, way above user fees that we're charging right now, you know, how we're financing. I mean, 50% isn't 50% in the new world. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, to the chair, I think it's a very fair comment. I mean, you will find efficiencies in buildings that are more modern, that operate more efficiently, but you will have some degree of servicing of debt, I would assume. And so to your comment about 2 facilities, the balance between build new versus replace is you have the assets today and they are incredibly valuable and they're incredibly expensive to replace. So could you achieve your 50%? I would suggest probably, but it would come, to your point, or I think I heard, it would come at the expense of your rates. Your rates would have to go. And they're incredibly competitive right now.
Now, final comment, I guess, has to do with Canal Flats. It's important to remember that Canal Flats is not an arena that's run by Canal Flats. It's an arena that was financed and is being run by the regional district. And one of the considerations that I think we should be looking at here is broadening broadening the scope a little bit to take a look at both Cranbrook and the regional district and Kimberley. For when we look at an integrated facility, we have opportunity for that with the 3 municipalities. I don't think it's something that we would be able to carry on our own, but if we get the 3 municipalities in place, that, you know, that picture might change. Kevin, go ahead.
Question for staff, I guess. Are we running at 100% capacity for rentals for ice time? Or what's our ratio over the last, say, 2 years? Just for perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dunneback. Tim actually might be able to speak to that as well, but my understanding was for the prime time rates, we were around 85% utilization. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, 83 and 86% between the two arenas where you would be on prime time. I would suggest that you should be 95% is where you want to be.
So some room for improvement.
Yeah, and some of that could be scheduling or, you know, seasons or cancellations due to weather. There could be a whole bunch of really good reasons for that, but I think there's probably opportunity in that for sure.
So, okay, one last question, Tim. With regard to funding, our experience to date over the last few years with funding for recreational facilities has not been great. We've had at least 2 requests for grants go out to have the boards and the glass, the chiller, you know, kind of that infrastructure replaced, and been turned down each time in favor of other infrastructure, sewer, water, roads. And I think the granting agencies look at those more favorably than they do recreation facilities. So what is the experience and kind of where do we go? Where do we get pointed to be able to offset a lot of this cost, similar to the wastewater treatment plant for recreation facilities?
I think you're doing the right thing is what I would suggest is in our experience, and we have the privilege of working right across Canada. I would suggest the last couple of years have been more challenging around recreational funding because there haven't been the federal programs to match with potential provincial ones. Now, that being said, our new federal government seems to have strong purpose around large community infrastructure projects, but we haven't seen the budget and we haven't seen the funding numbers around it. But in our position, the Green Building Fund that was there of the past to replace assets like this that would essentially support 30% of a new construction, we do believe it's going to be renewed by the federal government. And to be able to provide access to it, there will have to be matching funds through the provincial government. And we know there are some within the province of BC that you could match well on, certainly around energy efficiency. But you can't access any of it unless you have a plan and you have to have details. You have to have a feasibility study on what you want to do. And so I think this is the right first step to understand exactly where you stand. I think landing on a recommendation, and that could be 2 options depending on funding. Heck, it could be 3 options. But I do think that you will see funding federally. To access that funding, there will have to be funding provincially that will match it. And then, I mean, candidly, normally your perfect model is 30% feds, 30% province, 30% municipality, and 10% fundraised. But we do believe that the Green Building Fund will be replaced by something else. We don't know. And so I think what you're doing is the right approach. Understand your plan, understand the cost of delivering that plan, and then have a document that you can present to funding partners at various levels. I also want to come back to the comment that was said around a regional plan. I don't think you can highlight that strategy enough. You know, we find ourselves in Canada. Canada's an amazing community. We have 2,500 arenas, of which 50% of them are end of life. And so, you know, we find ourselves with a $30 billion problem across Canada in just arenas alone. I think in all of our experiences, coming up with a regional strategy and a very clear plan of what you need is your first step. And I think you're doing that. And then I think we have to wait to see what happens federally in terms of funding opportunities and how the BC government will match it.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that, Tim. Council, unless there's any final comments. Go ahead, Kevin.
Does the NHL offer any money for these?
Yeah, so the NHL, I mean, small sums. There's kind of $150,000 pieces that are associated with it. Sometimes if you have a partnership with a team, and you know, you'll see teams will invest in their junior clubs in terms of arenas. But no, the NHL The NHL will provide some small funding through some of their charitable work, but I haven't seen them be a great solution in circumstances like yours.
All right, thanks for this, Tim. Question for staff. I didn't see an item in the regular agenda to deal with kind of next steps here. Is that what we want to do after you've had an opportunity to kind of assess things following this presentation, or help me out?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This was an information session update of where we're at, overview of kind of what we've arrived at and the process of how we got there. So next steps, as Tim mentioned, will be the engagement. So we're planning an open house mid-October, as well as doing online surveys and things like that. So that'll run the course, and then we'll work on finalizing our report. Once we have that report, we'll bring that back for council adoption.
All right, awesome. No direction from council required.
Not at this time.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Nick.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again, Tim. Appreciate
you.
the information and the work. We'll chat again.
We will. Good luck with the meeting. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
You bet. All right, we spent a fair amount of time on that, but I thought it was important that we do that. It's been a long time coming and it's big. And I think, yeah, that was time well spent. Okay, next up, we have the housing needs integration initiated draft of the OCP and the zoning bylaw update. So the motion on the floor is the council receive the reports. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Cairns, thank you. Councillor Fox seconds. Go ahead, Justin.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for having me, Mayor and Council. Let's see you again tonight. So yes, the two draft bylaws that you see in front of you today are for the integration of the housing needs report that was adopted by Council back in December, and does need to be integrated into our OCP and zoning bylaw by the end of the year. Excuse me. The drafts that you see attached to this report include all of the changes in track change form so that it can be referred back and forth between the currently adopted OCP and zoning bylaw. So I'm going to give a quick overview of these proposed amendments and then go over the next steps. So in the Fish Community Plan, the first area that I'd like to highlight is in the vision statement. Generally, the community did find that this vision statement met their expectations of what they'd like to see Kimberley evolve to in the future, but there was some comments around enhancing the language, particularly around inclusive housing and the connection with the natural environment. So that's what you see there. Under the objectives and policies sections, there were several amendments proposed that are more ambition directed. So these are overarching policies and not necessarily as binding as when we get down to the development permit area section. And those are more, I guess, binding at the development stage of process. But starting it off, there is the large parcel neighborhood plan requirement, and you will see this reflected, and I'll get into that a little bit more in the development permit area, but effectively having additional requirements when there are large parcel developments proposed to help guide that process along. There is also a prioritization of city-owned land for affordable housing, and the policies that are recommended therein are directed towards a new policy of council that would basically guide how, when there are decisions around city-owned properties, that there is a focus on affordable housing within that. That was included as that is one of the major assets where the city has an ability to have more of a direct control or yeah, I guess a direct control over how and when affordable housing can actually be realized. The strengthening of on-street parking restrictions, again, is directional to how and where parking or city-owned land can be used for parking. This was the result of community feedback where parking is a growing issue for many folks. And so within that city-owned land, making sure that it's available for residents of the local community and not being used for more storage-focused purposes is the intention there. And then finally, the strengthening of accessibility, wildfire preparedness, and water conservation language is just sort of throughout. We know that these are all issues that are increasing within community concern. And so we do want to have that addressed. Yeah, and so moving along, the development permit areas, and this is where we get into some more of the meat and potatoes of the more structured changes and requirements when there are development proposals. So that first piece on the large parcel multi-lot subdivision neighborhood planning requirements, and this goes for either subdivisions and or development proposals where there is a lot that is over 1 hectare in size, but there's a neighborhood planning process involved. And this basically means that anytime there is that type of development proposed on a large lot, that we want to take a look at the overall land use for that parcel and how that's going to evolve over time so that it's not coming forward in a piecemeal fashion, and we can really help guide the developers and the development down a road that we can make sure that we're realizing those multiple goals and priorities within the fish community plan. The multi-unit development accessibility requirements have a requirement for 10% of units to be as accessible. This comes out of the accessibility plan that was adopted by council earlier this year, and effectively is working to ensure that there are accessible units for either individuals aging in place or who just have accessibility concerns. And so it's a tool that we can implement and have a standard across the board. The intention here is that that 10% would be based on a calculation and a rounded off calculation. So for example, if a 3-unit development were to come forward, that would be rounded down and not require a accessible unit. But if it hits that 5-unit mark, then that would be where the rounding off would trigger the requirement to have an accessible unit integrated into the plans. And then finally, I wanted to highlight the wildfire development permit area, as in previous reports have highlighted that that's something that staff had wanted to look at through this, and we have, and there is a working draft. However, in reviewing and preparing for this meeting, just felt that it wasn't quite at the presentation level yet. And so we do want to take that back and continue working on it before presenting it to council for consideration. I'm not sure if we'll make that for the consideration of these proposed amendments or through this amendment cycle, but just wanted to let you know that it is being looked at continually.
Go ahead, Councilman King.
Thanks, Justin. My question is kind of related around a little bit around just the constraints with the additional housing that we need. Obviously, money is the big one, right? How much engagement are we getting from like our building community, the trades and whatnot? I think, anybody who's done a renovation around town is realized that, you call a plumber, you call an electrician, and it's like, it could be a while before you get some work done. And, the needs that we have over these next little while are significant, but it also helps them gauge staffing and whatnot. So what kind of engagement have we had with them? And if it is poor, how can we reach out to that community better to tell the story of what we need?
Yeah, so I think it would be fair to say that there wasn't a high level of engagement through the community engagement process that we did undertake through June and into July.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is that's their busy season. It's not the ideal time frame to be reaching out to them, and just quite a constrained time frame at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I think looking forward, and maybe I'll start by looking back. There has been a lot of engagement with the development community generally on a lot of the past amendments that we've had. In terms of getting them to work in building housing, we definitely have seen a lot of uptake in building housing within the community. But a lot of the feedback that we've been hearing over the last few years is the cost of materials, the cost of labor. And that's something that they're running up against, especially when looking at that affordability piece. And so that's where, when we do look at where are the levers the city has control over that we can really utilize to help incentivize affordable specific housing. There aren't a ton of them, but the ones that we do have, we've tried to focus on within these proposed amendments.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just definition for me, units, is there a head count per units?
No. So a unit is a housing unit or the residential unit in this case. And that can be anything from a single bachelor apartment, for example, all the way up to a 10-bedroom home would be considered one residential unit. And so there aren't specific metrics on that. Well,
Yeah,
we do
just-
have metrics, but
Just curious, because like the 10-year plan, it says 586, so that's potentially 586 brand new homes. Then,
from the housing needs report.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what's being identified as the need. And within the housing needs report, we do have those needs broken down by unit type. And so we have structured, I guess, the zoning bylaw in such a way that we hope to achieve those, but a lot of that is developer led. So when a proposal comes in for a given development, generally speaking, what happens is they're posing a development type, so a different arrangement of units. So you may have a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. It may be, in some instances, a neighborhood of single-family homes. And within the zoning bylaw that we have more of that direct control over, we've worked to have that full array of options. So as much as we can't necessarily, well, there are mechanisms where we could go down a road of saying on this site, you must build X, Y, or Z. The current zoning bylaw operates much more on a permissive basis. So you may build any one of these unit types. But then going back to that neighborhood planning process, the intention there is to really focus in and to help the development permit approval process for large lot subdivision and or developments to, well, really reflect the goals and objectives of the Fish Community Plan, which does have the requirements and backing of the housing needs report. So giving staff and yourselves as council the ability to really further guide development through that development process.
Yeah, so just before you do that, Kevin, so the number of people behind doors, we do have census information that we get every 5 years, and it really is 2.2 people per dwelling.
okay, I was gonna say shoot that 3, just
Yep,
for.
2.2 per dwelling.
So 2.2 and in 20 years, 1,300 units. Where are we gonna get the property to facilitate that, or, and will our infrastructure be able to compensate that? It just seems like a really big number, and we already don't have a lot of space. Wonder if that's taken into the factor as to what point in time where we have to draw and say that.
Yeah, go ahead, Troy.
I think that's really part of the puzzle we're trying to solve, right? Like, we know that there's demand to grow in the community. We have, some of the information available for the housing needs report. Part of what we're trying to do here with the OCP and the zoning changes is to set that framework for guiding that growth. We have some combined efforts on better understanding our water system capacity, our wastewater treatment upgrade that's in the works. But yeah, you've nailed the point right there. Is we're trying to get a better handle on how much do we need to grow and how do we need to grow, where can we grow? I've made the point lots in the past. We actually have a lot of land in the slide in the last presentation where we talked about our population density. Not suggesting we build in the nature park or anything like that, but we have a lot of land designated for future development. But if we continue to build out that land the way we have been around the edges of the community, our costs are going to skyrocket, and we won't be able to keep that up. So we're going to have to accommodate some of that growth around the edge, but we also have set the stage to grow within some of the existing neighborhoods, which is much easier for us to accommodate and to have the capacity to grow. That being said, there's always going to be some limits, and we've got the capacity certainly for the next 5 to 10 year horizon. Beyond that, it's not quite such a clear picture, I would say. But that's why we need to start, getting a better handle on that. And we've been trying to direct new development to diversify the housing types and sizes and everything that they provide in new development. And I think we've seen some really good success in that so far. and, you know, part of that is we need some, you know, we need some better tools and some better tracking of what is being built. What do we have in existing inventory in terms of unit sizes and people can be accommodated in certain things. So, and that's just it, is we have to continue to diversify that housing supply. We can't keep building primarily, you know, single family large homes that for one family of 2 or 10, whatever it may be. We can't keep going that way. That's probably the same for every community. We have to start building different housing typologies and more diversity of types and sizes and spread throughout the community, not concentrated at any one neighborhood or you know, on the periphery of the town or anything like that.
So just for context, our footprint is 60 square kilometers. Cranbrook's is 30. We have 50% of our footprint in green space, which means that if you take out green space, what's left is exactly the same footprint as Cranbrook. They have 22,000 people. So that's at just a macro level. And so to build on what Troy said, we've got utilize it. We've got lots of opportunity utilization within infill and yeah.
And if we're careful with how we plan and approve that.
Yes. Okay, go ahead, Justin.
Thank you. Maybe I'll bring up one last point, and a big part of this exercise that we are undertaking is fulfilling direction from the province. So it may not be ultimately a question of if we want to grow, but fulfilling that direction from the province and having those growth requirements set in place, as many provinces and locales across the world are heading towards. So jumping onto the zoning bylaw. The first piece I wanted to highlight within the proposed amendments is the addition of a community commercial use type. So this is a brand new definition that was created, and it is intended to allow for commercial units within residential buildings. So this would be a separate commercial unit that would need to go through a development permit process, as well as business licensing process. But then it could be realized as any type of business that is within that short list of businesses within the definition. So things like restaurants, storefronts, or practitioner services. There are size limits set to this definition, 1,500 square feet or 140 meters squared. And yeah, it's really just intended to allow for a broader range of businesses within neighborhoods, as we have seen a large uptick in the use of home-based businesses. And as much as this is a separate category, it does require those added levels of scrutiny from the process effectively through the development permit process. And then moving along, on the commercial or C1 commercial zone, there is a proposal to remove multi-unit dwellings from that. Now, this largely stems from some of the discussions with our business community, who identified some of the new buildings that have gone in commercial zones that don't have any commercial aspect to them, and really wanting to highlight that the commercial zones were instituted and intended for commercial uses first and foremost. So the removal of the multi-unit development or multi-unit dwelling use from the C1 zone would not remove the use and allowance for residential units within a given development, but it would make it a requirement to have a commercial unit as a principal unit of frontage on any development within a C1 zone. So a development could theoretically propose a commercial unit with an unlimited number of residential units still, but that commercial use, just really highlighting that within the C1 zone is the intention there. And then the final piece that I wanted to highlight here tonight is the addition of, or the amendments to the group home definition, and then the additional use that would be included throughout many of our residential zones, or most of our residential zones. And the intention here really is to address that lower end of the housing needs report for folks experiencing homelessness, folks experiencing housing need because of a variety of situations. So in discussions with many of the service providers, including the RCMP here in town, right now, a lot of people falling into bad situations, be it something like domestic abuse or homelessness, just having a temporary situation that they're trying to deal with, are referred to Cranbrook services. So there are no Kimberley services available for folks within the community, and they're basically being pushed out of the community as a result. So this change doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a bunch of group homes popping up tomorrow, but it allows for service providers to propose to the province. There still is a provincial permitting or authorization process included in the definition, and we want to make sure that that remains in place. But then the realization of a group home type facility would not be under the public scrutiny, and it would basically be authorized as a right by council. So any of the operators that wish to look at having a service here would simply be looking at those provincial regulatory bodies to realize that service.
Councillor Fox.
I just want to clarify that I understand that correctly. So it would be like it wouldn't matter what neighborhood they wanted to drop it in. They would just have to make sure they have their sprinklers in place and all those things that the funder, whoever it is, wants to see. But as neighborhood, nobody can kind of say no.
Effectively, yes.
Effectively? Okay.
So it would be a by right is sort of how we refer to that. So it's an allowable use within the zone. Currently, group home is only allowed within an institutional zone. So this opens it up to effectively say, these are small, it's a limit of 10 persons that would be able to utilize the group home services at any given time, not including staff, but that could go in most zones within our community. Most obvious of that being the RS zone, which is the major residential zone within the community.
Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I think this is a great first step to kind of getting ahead of how we develop in town. I think in some ways it does more than I expected it to do. So I'm happy to see some of these changes, especially the C1 change. I've been hoping to see that come in front of me for a while, and nice to see it. I do wonder what you see as the next steps as far as getting in front of development and trying to really be a little bit more conscious in the way that we grow, because we're growing faster than we ever have, and there is some concern from citizens that it's not really being done in a thoughtful way. So I'm just curious if there's any other means that you see as a way of getting ahead of this and really growing in a way that's sustainable. And then I did have one other question, but maybe I'll get you to answer that one first.
Sure. So in speaking with other departments here, especially, I think that a lot of that concern, or from what I've heard, a lot of that concerns comes from the water stability and utilities sort of arena. And in speaking with, I'll probably turn over to Nick here as well, but in speaking with other departments, making sure that we do have an understanding of our capacity, that we do have an understanding on pretty much a street by street basis of where and when we may be butting up against some limitations of our services, that we can better plan for that and plan for that in the future. That being said, there's not a lot of indication that there's any one area that is getting to those more extreme limits of growth potential, especially from an infill perspective, that there are a lot of areas that can really handle quite a lot more growth. But when we do start getting into that minutia of water use and how we plan for that into the future, there seems to be some indication of having some studies that clearly show when and how there may be triggers for increased service load.
Yeah, I was less concerned about the services, more the planning aspects. So just looking at zoning and growth of commercial zones and how different neighborhoods interact and where we're putting multi-unit development and just whether we're able to like model that a little bit more and kind of get ahead of it. I know it's hard because it's largely developer or privately driven, but I'm just curious if there's any other tools in your toolkit moving forward like this that we'll be using to try to direct the future of what our city looks like.
Certainly. So if I'm reading your question correctly, especially on the commercial and sort of creating that vibrancy, I guess, or ensuring that we can have the economic development occurring in step with residential and population increase. I think that would be the next step, that would be the logical step for a official community plan review process. Now, unfortunately, as I noted at the outset of this process, it is very, very short. Typically, these processes go for 18 to 24 months, and we're completing this within 6 or 7 months, basically. So it hasn't afforded an ability to do a review of our commercial and institutional lands or industrial lands. And so I think that would be a good thing to look at over the coming years. Be that as an interim OCP update or potentially with the next mandated update that will be required to be completed by 2030. And that can really help to better understand where higher density developments especially may or may not have greater impact to the overall flow and function of the city. Currently, with the zoning bylaw that we do have in place, and no real amendments to the density of any given parcel are being considered at this time, that it's sort of throughout the community. And there is that ability for slow and steady growth throughout the community and not necessarily a huge spike in one area or another. There are a few R3 lots remaining in town, or R3 adjacent type lots, but they are few and far between. And those are really the only parcels that would allow for a large spike in any localized area. And so I think that as those do get built out, then I think that there will be more of a need to start looking at that overall community planning process and really determining, where is some additional density really needed or sought, and possibly looking at upzoning existing parcels from their current use. But that would be a future process.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. And this one should be quick. Community commercial, who does this apply to? Like what zone is this? Like it's a zone, I'm assuming there's no parcels within this zone at this point, or?
Yeah, so it would be any zone parcels within the zone. So the major one, again, RS zone. That's most of the residential lots throughout the community. So it would be fair to say that most residential lots could benefit from this.
Yeah, so this applies to RS one.
RS, as well as R3,
Okay.
and there are a few others.
So it applies to a few different zones. Cool.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I get it now. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Councilor McGuire. Are you done?
I just had one more slide
Yep,
that I was
go
just
ahead.
going to go over next steps here, super quick, but.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So the next steps going forward, we do have a tight deadline, as I mentioned previously, but we do want to get this back out to the community for any comments from the community and stakeholders. So should council authorize staff to move forward after tonight, we will be looking to get the proposed amendments up on the engagement platform, as well as schedule an open house meeting and and make sure that our stakeholders, community stakeholders and external stakeholders have an opportunity to review this as well. We do need to have it adopted by December 31st for that legislative deadline. And so we will be looking at moving it forward with amending bylaws within the next probably about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, and then moving through the formal process from there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Last call for comments before I call the question. Go ahead, Sue.
I want to say thank you for this awesome work. And it's really comprehensive and you're getting us out in front so that we're not pigeonholed into reacting and we can multi-solve for so many different needs. That it would be like, I look at this and this neighborhood plan requirement, compact design, minimizing expansion of road and infrastructure, diverse housing options, accessibility, protection of green spaces, traffic calming, street trees, noise buffering, cooling, stormwater management, wildfire resilience, aesthetic, quality of life, active transportation, so many different things. The list goes on. And if some, I think we're watching some development happening right now where these things were not in place. And so we're kind of on the receiving end of those things. And I think that by this thoughtful approach, we can achieve higher density while protecting quality of life and so many other aspects. So thank you for your work on this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for the comments, Councillor Cairns. So this was incredibly comprehensive. The staff report itself was meaty, but in going through the OCP amendments, there's an awful lot to absorb there as well. I would like to suggest that in the time we're going through the public engagement, prior to it coming back for first reading, which would be following that public engagement, correct? That council review and submit questions and comments from the report. We'll give you time, more than the 4 days we had to roll through this agenda, and get these back to planning so that it can be taken into consideration as part of that review process. Does that sound reasonable?
Absolutely.
And so if you'll let us know what those dates are, then we'll know, like essentially give us the deadline. We need council feedback by this date. And I guess the other comment I would make is that in the course of putting the plan together, and I'm sure you're doing this, but I just want to make sure it's on the table. You need to be assessing risk factors that are involved in the changes that are being made as well. The last thing we want to do is not meet demand and put our developers and builders in a position where they can't make any money, because we'll have the exact opposite of the intended, which is going to be to shut building down. So, I'm not saying that's a huge risk factor, but it is a risk factor. And, we'll look forward to, seeing how those things are in fact mitigated in the final report. All right, call the question. All those in favor? You remember what we're voting on? Well, it's a little more than receipt, actually. It is receipt and approval to move forward with community engagement on the proposed amendments prior to first reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate the work on this. Okay, next up, we have a bylaw, an amendment bylaw for first reading. The motion on the floor is that staff be directed to provide notice of first reading of the proposed amended bylaw, which is for the addition of a car wash use category as a permitted principal use in the C3 zone.
Excuse me, Don. I'm going to recuse myself because I own a C3 property.
Okay. You don't know car wash though. Fair enough. Yep, fair enough. Okay, go ahead, Troy.
Thank you.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor McBain moves and Councillor Fox seconds. Go ahead, Troy.
Thank you, Mayor McCormick. Yeah, as you point out, we received an application that would involve, the application is driven by a specific property that's in the C3 zone, but the proposed change here would in fact apply to any of the C3 zone properties in town. And the change is fairly simple. It's right now car wash use is listed as a permitted accessory use, but not as a permitted principal use of any property. So we have one property in town that I think everyone's familiar with that does have longstanding car wash use on there. And they are proposing to expand that use or extend that with the addition of an outside wash bay. And that is unfortunately for them, not possible under the current zoning framework, thus triggering the proposed zoning change here. If, should the zoning change be ultimately successful, then there would be ability for that project to move forward through the permitting process, get built. So as pointed out, this proposed bylaw amendment would simply add car wash use as a principal permitted use. And because of it is a commercial use or application expansion of commercial use within commercially designated, commercially zoned properties, staff recommend that there's no public hearing required for this amendment. However, council may choose to proceed with a public hearing. And depending on that decision, that would just factor into what our next step is. So should council choose to move forward without a public hearing, then we would be required to give notice of first reading prior to that consideration of first reading. If council is leaning towards holding a public hearing over the matter, then we would have council approve first and second reading and then schedule a public hearing. Start that process. The recommendation that's on the table is to proceed with notice of first reading.
All right, thanks, Troy. So this is, just for clarification, this is Mike's Car Wash down in Marysville. And he's looking to not add another building or a bay, but to add facilities on the external of the building. Very similar to what their car wash is like in Cranbrook. That facilitates bigger vehicles and things to be able to stay outside of the bays, which is very annoying. And they're sitting in line trying to get into bays. Okay, questions? Councillor Fox, go ahead.
So if I read the report right, he's been, or someone has been operating a car wash there since like the 90s. How come we've never talked about it? But like, and it's not a criticism of anyone. It's just more like, this seems like a real long time to let something slide.
I guess part of the answer to that is there hasn't been a proposal like this to expand it that we're aware of, certainly not in more recent years, but we don't know the full circumstances to kind of what led to the creation of this use in the first place, but it's an easy review and interpretation of the current zoning bylaw that triggers this requirement this time.
Yeah, the bylaw allows for grandfathering for those anomalies that have been in place for a long time.
Yeah.
So even though it's changed ownership a number of times, each of those new owners gets grandfathered.
Yeah, like there's.
Yeah, change of
Legacy
ownership doesn't
thing.
factor in unless they
So
discontinue
this is
that
the
use.
first opportunity to address the
Okay,
situation.
okay. Can I just ask one other?
Go ahead.
How did the neighbors feel about, because there's residential kind of right there, is there not? If I'm visualizing it kind of right in my head?
At this stage, we haven't engaged or consulted with the neighbors, but
Okay,
that's
so
part of what will happen
Okay.
through, I guess, either option here is a notice will be provided one way or another. Yeah.
Councillor McGuire, then Councillor McBain.
So yeah, my questions are kind of along the lines of like, just, this changes every single C3 lot in town and creates the potential of just putting a single car wash on those lots. And my concern is maybe the bylaw is written the way it is for a reason, to prevent that. And I'm just curious if this might fit better in one of our light industrial zones, or I don't know if there is current verbiage in either of our industrial zones to allow for car washes, but maybe a rezone of this lot could maybe prevent future issues. I don't know. It's just a question more than anything. I'm not necessarily saying that's how I feel, but I'm just curious what your thoughts on that would be.
Yeah. I have, off the top of my head, I don't think that the car wash use is listed in any other zones at this time. There's some chance there's maybe an industrial, but I don't think so. That is a possible option, I guess. Not, maybe I'm not sure if this particular property owner is interested in that route, but I've reviewed that option with them. Your first point there, yeah, you're right. It's possible that other sites could be redeveloped for car wash use. Given what we know of those sites and their present uses, they're just about every one of them is quite built out and developed with other principal uses. We think that's probably unlikely. If anything, it'd be an accessory use, which is already permitted. So I think, you know, sort of weighing all those things, we don't see a real significant difference that way, I guess, but again, that's changing it to industrial could be an option, but then I guess then you open up that opportunity that those other industrial uses would be allowed on that site as well, right? So, and you know, maybe that's perhaps less favorable, hard to say.
Okay.
Or that, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not building a new building. So
I mean, as we are now allowing every C3 zone lot in town to also just tear everything down and build a car wash. It does
yeah, if
impact
there
other
was a-
lots,
if
that's all
there
I'm
was a
saying.
business case to do
Whereas,
that,
whereas, you know, like there, we do have the option of creating a new zone for this specific lot too. So I'm just saying we have other options.
So Troy, so that's the question. Why didn't you just do a spot zone on this?
Well, like I said, that is an option. We didn't identify that as a likely option, I guess, just I think that this is, you know, an easy fix in this case. We don't see a strong potential for new development of new sites just for a car wash facility. But you know, things can change in the future. I don't know, but yeah.
Councilor McBain, go ahead.
This is just a suggestion. It actually doesn't have much to do with this thing, but it does have a lot to do with what you guys are talking about right now. I would suggest on almost all of our reports and stuff like that, let's lay out the key risks and the likelihood that those could happen. Like you pointed out exactly, Woody, like, yeah, we're narrowing this. We're potentially allowing somebody to just build, you know, have multiple car washes. What's the likelihood about that? I think we can all agree it's extremely low. So let's just cut to the chase so that we don't, I mean, Troy, this is not a criticism of, all the background information is great, but I think we have the top and we just say, here's the key risks. So you can look at it, and then we don't spend 10 minutes at a really tight meeting talking about things that are really highly unlikely. Just a suggestion. I think it would move things along. To me, this is kind of a no-brainer. So yeah, it just struck me
Thanks,
as a
Councilor. Last comment.
Oh, we have had at one time 3 car washes going at the same time. And for reasons that none of us are really clear about, 2 of them are closed. So the possibility of having a new one probably is only going to be fueled by the number of people that want to get the car washed sooner or later.
Okay, last call. So the motion on the floor is just a reminder to provide notice of first reading to add car wash use categories of permitted principal use in the C3 zone. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next up, we have a couple of development variance permits. The first one is for 580 308th Street. And the motion on the floor is that council approve development variance permit 2025-002 at 580 308th Street to reduce the minimum yard setback to an accessory structure from 1.5 meters to 0.76 meters. This is the backyard gazebo that we've talked about for a couple of meetings now. Could I have a mover, please? Councilor McBain, thank you. Councilor McGuire seconds. Roy, any further comments? I noticed there were no.
Yeah, just very briefly, no comments received, no concerns received. So staff recommending to go ahead with approving the variance.
All right, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And the next one is the development permit for 1180 303 Street. It's fairly lengthy here. I won't read through the entire one, but it's council approved the development permit to allow the development of a contractor sales warehouse and workshop facility on the industrial lands out in Marysville, civically known as 1180 303 Street, in accordance with the plans attached to the staff report and the conditions outlaid by planning. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Roberts seconds. Go ahead, Troy.
Thank you, Mayor McCormick. Yeah, we have received a new development permit application for this property. Council may recall that just approximately 2 years ago gave approval for a self-storage facility on this property, which the owner has decided not to proceed with at this time and has come up with an alternative development plan for this a single building contractor sales space, warehouse space, workshop space, kind of combined use, multi-use facility that by the owner of the property for their business, local, very well-known local building construction business. This, yeah, it's just over, a little over 5,000 square feet. Like I said, provides few different workshop spaces in there. This is, the site's already connected to the water system, so it'll be easy to provide water for this, but there is, as council knows, no municipal sewer network on this street, so they'll have to come up with a plan, which shouldn't be any unforeseeable challenges there for an on-site wastewater system. And that'll be reviewed as part of the next stages of the permitting process, should council give them permission to proceed here. Yeah, we're not identifying any major obstacles or concerns with this proposal. It complies with the development permit guidelines and all the zoning requirements, and we are recommending that council give the green light to proceed on this development permit.
Thank you, Troy. Council, questions? Councillor Fox, go ahead.
I have one quick. So this is someone who has an industrial land who wants to do something industrial with it, correct? Essentially,
I don't know if I would label it as purely industrial.
but like more
My
industrial.
guess is it'll likely get assessed as commercial, but it is industrial zoned and the use category, the use class complies and fits and all that.
Okay.
So it is industrial zone property, but like
Industrial-ish.
any of the properties in the industrial zone, will most likely be classed commercial, I would think.
Further, council? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, the second quarter bylaw enforcement report. Motion on the floor is to receive the report. Councillor Roberts moves, Councillor McGuire seconds. On review, any questions? Maurice will table. Since she is bylaw. Okay. Call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Next up, we have the Kimberley Nature Park Management Plan, and the motion on the floor is approval of that plan. Mover, please. Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Karen seconds. Further discussion on this? Go ahead, Councillor Dunavac.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important piece of our community to maintain and cherish a piece of nature so close that has ability for all people, whether they have abilities or disabilities, to actually get up into nature and enjoy some of the most breathtaking views that these cookies in Kimberley has to offer. So I strongly recommend that we move forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor Dunavac. Anybody else? Right, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, next up, we have the snow and ice control policy and management plan. First motion is that council approve the snow and ice control policy number OPS 003 in the form attached to the staff report. Mover, please. Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Karen seconds. Any questions or comments on this, council? Go ahead, Councillor Fox.
Questions too.
Staff?
Staff, which staff? Well, I know staff, but like which one
Well,
specific? Okay, so,
That would be Ryan.
okay, question number one. So, because the accessibility committee looked at this, right? Did all of the recommendations that they gave get implemented in some manner or another, as best as we are able to do so.
So currently, the city has received feedback from the Accessibility Committee, and we are looking at ways and regarding on how to collect all that into our plan and our policy and to see what's feasible, what's not. So some of the items naturally did make it in, and some we're looking to see how we can navigate making those in.
Okay, is there going to be some communication going back to the committee about that? Just in terms of like, because they, you know, I'm on the committee and Woody's been on the committee, and like people spend a lot of time reading this stuff and then kind of don't necessarily know where things wind up. So I'm just wondering if they get some, like, I realize that we don't necessarily want to report to them all the time, but just, you know, is there a way to be like, hey, these ones are in place, these ones we have to figure out other stuff on?
I think it's feasible to make sure that we can get these comments back to that committee as we incorporate this further. I wouldn't see there being an issue with that.
Okay. Just one other question. So in one of these pages here, because this is a beast of a document, like all of these ones tonight, it says added new subdivisions into plowing areas and maps. Are we hiring people to plow these subdivisions? Or are we just like working with the same group of people to get that done?
So we are working with the same group of people to get that done.
Okay.
So as subdivisions come online, then it's the same staff. We just kind of navigate our forces over to these areas.
Okay, but, okay. That's not your fault. I think we could look at hiring more people. Just saying.
Further? Right, call the question on the approval of the policy. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next up, we have the council receive the 2025-2026 snow and ice management plan in the form attached to the staff report. Councilor McBain, thank you. Councilor McGuire seconds. Want to make some comments on this one?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Mayor McCormick and Council. I'm here to present the snow and ice management plan as well as the snow and ice policy. These updates are reflecting commitment to modernizing the operations, improving our service delivery, and maintaining our high standards of safety and efficiency for the residents of Kimberley, while also putting an updated snow and ice removal policy, which we have already approved. The purpose of the policy is to establish the city's level of service for winter maintenance on streets, sidewalks, and pathways. And it also provides clarity to the public, to the committees, council, and staff on how snow and ice will be managed, while recognizing the constraints and challenges that can come with this work. With the new policy, being presented, the city has consolidated two legacy documents. The old road maintenance snow and ice policy and the sidewalk snow and ice removal policy into the single and clear and more accessible framework. But with that, we've also been able to take out some of the wording from our plan. So the plan document has actually shrunk and been moved into that policy. While we've been able to kind of navigate our plan into a more concise document on what our continuing work is for the community and the objectives and specific operational steps that we would do to update and maintain in the community. So with the policy framework in place, I'd like to highlight the updates to the snow and ice management plan. The new plan includes new subdivisions that have been added to plowing areas with the updated maps. Transition of some one-way plowing areas that were split plowing to improve snow storage and accessibility. Adjustments to plowing sequences to increase efficiency and reduce response times. And we had a fleet update from this year, including the snow blower unit 42. We had an aging unit of 16 years, and we've now just updated it. So hopefully that improves the operation as well further. And we have also received feedback from the Accessibility Advisory Committee regarding that winter mobility. And we are hoping to make sure that we can kind of maximize our responsiveness and incorporate that into our future updates as they come forward. I'd also like to just briefly address our crew makeup. So over the past 2 years, we've welcomed many new operators. So currently half of our 12-person roads crew staff has had 1 to 2 winter seasons. While we do have an influx of new operators that do bring fresh perspectives and talent, it does create a learning curve, which we are actively addressing. We've created a strong emphasis for training and development, which was passed through council earlier, which I believe is progressing well, and we've laid a strong foundation regarding the training that is being provided to our operators. And just to make sure, I'd like to speak towards residents' most effective way to continue reporting concerns would be through the Ops Ready app or contacting the operations desk for any concerns that come up. With that, it just makes sure that we're properly documenting, tracking, and we can address complaints as they come in a timely manner. I'd like to thank council for your continued support with the winter operations, and I'm confident that the policy and plan will enhance our services that we're providing to the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Council? Questions? Go ahead.
I'm just not familiar with the Ops Ready app that you mentioned, so this is separate from Lightship.
It's the same as Lightship, but it has changed. I believe it was a new.
Yeah, they just rebranded.
Yeah.
The same.
And we've made that change on the website. Further? Pardon me, what is the number one issue that we hear from residents? Now, I appreciate that we live in Kimberley, we get lots of snow, we have ski hill, we want lots of snow. And if you don't want snow, this is not a good place to live. But having said that, I think by and large, you know, the staff does an outstanding job through the wintertime. The feedback I get compared for especially people moving in who've lived in other communities, they think we are the gold standard. So given that we do a really good job, it's not perfect. And we do hear complaints coming in about certain issues. What is the number one or top 2 things that you hear every year, Ryan?
While I'm impartial, I do believe this is also the gold standard. I think it's great here. I think the main complaints that I'm hearing about, number one would be windrow removal. I do believe that seems to be the number one complaint. The other one that I've had quite a bit of this year was actually, so we had issues with the accessible parking. Windrows left it behind some of the handicap stalls and just making parking areas where we weren't around the plateau able to have people step out. So I think for the most part, they're actually both windrows. It's just one was more residential windrow removal. The other was more active towards plateau and making sure people had accessibility to get out of their vehicle when parked along there. Yeah, so the 2 would be windrows.
Right. Okay, cool. So this would have been about probably previous council. So that's got to be at least 4 years, maybe 5 years ago. Staff did an estimate on what it was going to cost incrementally to do windrows. And if I remember correctly, it was in the neighborhood of $350,000 or thereabout per year. An additional person would have to be hired for that. Additional capital equipment in the form of a Bobcat or whatever. It was pretty expensive. Council today said, yeah, that's about a 3% increase in taxes to do windrows, and they defeated that. The cost of doing that has to be, you know, given the post-COVID inflation, has to be an awful lot more than that. I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be, and I'm not trying to create work for you guys, but if we could get an update on exactly what the cost of that would be, it would help us as council and you as staff, you know, basically say to folks, we get it. However, you know, this is the decision we made and why we made it. I think that'd be useful. So I'll leave that to your judgment. Okay, I'm going to call the question on receipt of the plan. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, next up we have a couple of grant applications going into the Strategic Priorities Fund. Oh, we got a couple of others here. Yep, sorry about that. So the third resolution as part of the snow and ice control is that council rescind the sidewalk snow and ice removal policy approved on February 13th, 1989, along with any subsequent amendments made thereto. Could I have a mover, please? Councilor McGuire and Councilor Karen seconds. No discussion needed on this. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This would relate to the consolidation that you talked about earlier, Ryan, correct? And finally, the council rescind the maintenance snow removal policy approved on December 14th, 1998, along with any subsequent amendments made thereto. Councilor McBain moves, Councilor Fox seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, next up, we have the Strategic Priorities Fund, specifically a grant application for an integrated water system efficiency and resilience planning project. Motion on the floor is that council direct staff to submit an application to that fund in the amount of $241,200. And further, that if the grant application is successful, be directed to include the project in the related budget year as a grant funded project. Councillor Cairns moves and Councillor Fox seconds. Pam.
Actually, maybe I'll speak to this one.
Okay, go ahead.
Pam graciously helped us write the staff report and everything amazing. So thank you, Mayor McCormick. The purpose of this staff report is to get council approval for us to submit an application to the Strategic Priority Fund for the project we're dubbing the Integrated Water System Efficiency Resilient Planning Project. So this, as the staff report details, is an amalgamation of two of our existing important projects that we had slated for this year for studies to update our water loss management plan, which we all know we still have significant hurdle to get over there and how we're going to manage this significant losses that we're having right now. And on the other side, on the sewer system side, looking at the inflows and infiltrations into our current drainage system and ensuring the longevity of capacity of our plant and everything like that. So as we worked through scoping these out and pricing them out with our consultant, Urban Systems, they recommended that there's an opportunity here to go after this capacity building stream of the Strategic Priority Fund. And they suggested to group these together. We've expanded the scope a little bit in anticipation of getting some more funding to make it a little broader in scope, more fulsome review of these, and applied for it as one project.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Any questions, council? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, and next up is another grant application into the same fund for the Kimberley Avenue reconstruction project. And the motion on the floor is that council direct staff to submit an application requesting 100% funding in the order of $4,977,432, which is the estimated cost of the Kimberley Avenue reconstruction project. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McGuire moves and Councillor Roberts seconds. So do you want to make any comments on this, Nick? I think we know what this is.
Yes, thank you, Mayor McCormick. So as you mentioned, same grant opportunity, but under the capital stream of it. So this was a project we have identified for year 2 of our current financial plan. We're actually going through the design on that right now. And as we work through that design, we've received from new information recently in regards to the current estimate on this. Unfortunately, we haven't had a ton of time to dive through the details on that, but we still thought it was prudent to put it forth as an opportunity to seek funding for this planned project that we have. Now, as you can see, there's significant cost increases. I have had a chance to do some preliminary reviews on that, and there's costs associated with some increased scope as we integrated the downtown urban design strategy that expanded our sidewalks, curbs and gutters, and paving areas and parking areas. So that is kind of the biggest contributor to what we're seeing on the expanded scope here. We are working with our consultant to determine okay, where is the rest of this and items like that, but that work is still ongoing. And as we mentioned, we thought it would still be prudent to seek council approval to still apply for this grant opportunity. And should we be successful with that, we can move forward with implementing the project as currently budgeted. If we aren't, we will need to go back to the drawing board and kind of reevaluate this, better understand where the scope increases lie and see if there's an opportunity to either phase this or some other approach on how we can execute this important project.
So would we be happy with 3 million?
Yes, we
So-
would be happy
so
with.
If I may make a suggestion.
Yeah.
The chances of getting 100% funding at $5 million on this grant app is not high. I think it might be a bit of a shot in the dark. However, if we go in and indicate that the project is 4.9 million, the city of Kimberley is putting in 2.1 million, which we have already budgeted for, paid for out of reserves. And our request is for the 2.9 million. I think our probability of getting that 2.9 is way higher.
I think that's a great suggestion. And absolutely we can rise that.
You only got a couple of days, I understand.
It's tight, yes, but
Good luck, man.
very
Thank you for your
capable staff.
help. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so that is a good suggestion, I think, and if that's the direction council wants to go, we would ask that the resolution be amended accordingly. Because right now it reads that we're asking for 100% of the $4.5 million essentially.
I'll make that movement or amendment. I'll make, it's getting late. Basically what you suggested.
That will be essence of that.
Are you good with the friendly amendment there, Maurice?
Okay, so,
Tell them what they need to do here.
so, okay, good enough. So we'll defeat this and then come back with a new motion. Okay. All right, call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Should have said all those opposed, any in favor? That motion is defeated. So the new motion is that we apply to that fund for the 2.9, kind of whatever that number is, million. Highlighting the fact that the city of Kimberley will contribute 2.1 million to the total project cost of 4.9.
Wordsmith need to come later.
Exactly.
As long as there's a good
Yep. And further, that the grant application, if successful, be directed to be included in year one of the 26 to 35 year financial plan. Financial. Okay, mover, please. Councilor McBain, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councilor McGuire, thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Awesome. Thanks for that, Nick. Okay, couple more. We're getting there. Next up, we have the relocation and/or renewal of the rainbow symbolism in public spaces. And the motion on the floor is that the existing rainbow crosswalks located at Wallinger Avenue and Spokane Street not be reinstated due to ongoing deterioration and unsuitability of the location in the high vehicular traffic area. There's a further motion we'll take as a second after that. So mover, Councilor McBain, do I have a seconder? Councilor Dunneback. Okay, Pam.
I can
You-
speak
you
to this
had a-
briefly. Ryan can certainly speak to the technical aspects of what this entails and budget and that type of thing. I became involved because there was increased public inquiry about what was happening with the crosswalk at Wallinger Avenue and Spokane. So as you can see, it's been deteriorated pretty much for quite a while now, and further exacerbated by the construction that's happening here with the St. Mary's revitalization project. So now that that's concluded and school's in session, we thought it best to get something down there in the form of a crosswalk and whatever that may be. So Ryan and I talked about it and came up with some options, some most frequently used recognition of the LGBTQ2S+ community. And these are the options that we presented.
So just to be clear on the cost factor, you kind of skimmed over that. Ryan, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so we did the original crosswalk for what I believe I believe it was 15,000. It was 15,800 in 2021. In 2023, I received the quote for the updating of the crosswalk for 20,400. And last year I got a quote for another update, what that could potentially cost. I said it's too far gone. They'd have to reinstall the entirety. And they were verbal quoted for 30,000. I'm awaiting a further quote this year, which I'm sure that 30,000 is up a bit more this year. And so we actively just want to make sure we had a few other locations and situations to present to council.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Go ahead, Councilor McBain.
Yeah, so my suggestion is to, I gave some thought about this. Actually, Kevin and I were talking about this at last meeting. I think the best approach for us to take, regardless of the financial impacts, is to install some symbolism that would be the least likely to be defaced. Pam, you did a really nice job of describing, you know, the degradation of the crosswalk through vehicular traffic. But if we want to be honest with ourselves, some of the degradation was from people doing really stupid things on that crosswalk, including burnouts and other things that I just consider ignorant and, well, you could almost stretch it and just say discriminatory. So what I would like to see is something that lessens the likelihood of somebody defacing a flag or the symbolism that we are going to use. Obviously it's going to be the flag. And I think for me, exclusive of the costs, I think a flag or a series of flags that people can't access would make the most sense. And it has nothing to do with the money. It has more to do with people defacing it, which I think even I really thought the idea on the steps is a cool idea. It's a super cool idea, but I don't want to, I can almost guarantee somebody will deface it. And that would just be really disheartening. So that would be my recommendation.
Councilor Fox.
So I don't have a problem with the rainbow crosswalk. I don't necessarily have a problem with some of these suggestions that are in here. What I'm wondering is, like, just for an example, say you put can we just like stop for 5 minutes and get like a plan about how we deal with aesthetics in town? Because like, say you went with the painting of the sidewalk, well, you'd have the rainbow sidewalk, and then you have a wooden welcome sign, and then you have a dog, and then you have some trees that don't match. And then further down, you have like the miners, and then you have like a glass orb, and then there's like all these things. And it kind of like what I love happy. But then you got the cuckoo clock, but it kind of doesn't like jibe together, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm wondering, can we just agreed, we can do something sort of temporarily, but can we sort of look maybe at a larger plan for how we handle stuff like this across the board? Jim.
Yeah, there's an existing resolution on the books directing staff to develop policy around installations in the Plateau. And if you want to prioritize that and
Can I make a motion that we do that? Can I put forward that motion?
Hang on, let him finish.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it is on the books. It is a resolution. It's in the action items. It's a matter of prioritizing that amongst everything else that we're looking at. So we do have that direction from.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm all about, the flag and the crosswalks have been great. Explaining to my children what they're all about. The deterioration, the disrespect, that they've seen, well, and the missing piece from our construction, this summer. I just think that it's something that should be displayed proudly, for the whole year and not for just 6 months of the year. And wave it high and proud. So like, I'd love to see just like a super custom, awesome piece of artwork, pole that holds, a flag that is displayed all the time. Whether it's in Plattsville or in the memorial, but somewhere very visible for everybody to see. That will last for an extremely long time, so we're not having to reach out to get quotes that, by the sounds of it, seem to go up by about $10,000 every time we call them. One quote for one rad pole, if we got to replace a flag every 2 or 3 years because it's faded, so be it. It makes sense in the long run.
Thanks, Kevin. Go ahead, Councilor Roberts.
I wholly agree with Jason. I mean, that's trip to the school up and down all day, every day. First of all, you're gonna get the wear on those wooden steps. I don't even know. They're probably not even wooden because they let the snow through, right? They're metal now. Sorry, that my age shows there. But the seated place there, I know some people who would not sit on that if it had that rainbow on it. And I just think that that's the wrong choice for it. I don't believe they're correct. I don't believe they're right, but that's their problem. I would go wholly with the flags. Perhaps a central place in the plaza, like up above the gazebo or something where it's present when anybody's in the plaza. And
So if everybody is in favor of kind of the flag strategy, or just throw it back to staff to
Yeah.
figure out what.
the one thing I would like to see is if we're not going to fix the rainbow on the street, let's get rid of it.
It
Let's
would-
brown
it
it
would
out,
revert to a white
let's
crosswalk,
let's black it out and get rid of it. Yeah.
white it out. Okay. Go ahead, Sue.
So I appreciate this conversation, and I'm, of the mind that of Diana as well, around just the kind of the ad hoc approach, and I'd really like to see a policy move forward on art and cultural installations, because it does feel really ad hoc at this point. But I'd also support the putting up the flag. So yeah, both pieces.
Further?
Can I just offer a suggestion that perhaps the quick and dirty solution to this might be temporarily putting up flags, and while this policy is being developed, and then staff can maybe find something that works better for longer term, once said policy has been developed, approved, etc. Is that doable? I don't know who
Yeah.
answers that.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is doable, Diane. I think, I think we can have staff come back to us with a recommendation on exactly the locale, even on the short-term stuff. It's not up to us to kind of, do the what. Go ahead, Kevin.
So there's a nonprofit society for this, right? All as I see is an opportunity for them to write a grant. To have it awesome. Well,
Have we engaged the Pride Society at all? Maybe we should do that.
We have been in conversations with them and updating them as we go, and
Yeah.
this will be part of it. We're going to get a resolution here to work with them on maybe some recommendations. If it's a flag choice, then we can get.
All right, awesome. So, so the motion on the floor is to remove the crosswalk. I'm going to call the question on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councilor McGuire is opposed. The motion carries. And the next motion is to direct staff to, could I have somebody provide a motion? Go ahead, Jason.
an alternate symbol of support of the LGBTQ S+ community in the form of a flag at a location to be determined.
Could I have a seconder? Counselor McGuire, thank you. Hang on, hang on. So
Should I make it flag or should I just make it a symbol? I would just say symbol instead of flag, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, a little wider discretion, yeah, okay. Moved by Counselor McBain, seconded by Counselor McGuire. Go ahead, Counselor Roberts.
Just a friendly amendment would be appropriate to, is a location to be determined or in the plaza or not,
Look, well, we directed staff to come back with,
the location.
yeah. Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, the last item on the regular agenda. We do have an item in close this evening. Is the 2025 to 2027 resort development strategy. And the motion on the floor is that council approve the 2025 to 2027 RDS in the form attached to the chief admin officer staff report. Could I have a mover, please? Councilor McBain, thank you. Councilor Karen seconds. Okay, discussion. Jim, did you want to just give us the skinny on this? It's pretty simple, I think.
Yeah, just a brief bit of history, I guess. Kimberley is one of 14 designated resort municipalities in the province. And as such, we receive funding through the province for tourism-related infrastructure to build and diversify tourism infrastructure, deliver exceptional visitor experiences, and incorporate sustainable tourism practices and products. One of the conditions of the receipt of that funding is that on a periodic basis, we develop a resort development strategy, RDS, which in part describes the projects that the funding is going to be spent on. One of the requirements of that is we undertake a stakeholder engagement process. So there hasn't been a formal stakeholder engagement process in the past. So what we did this year is created a resort development strategy advisory working group, the AWG. It was comprised of a bunch of groups in town. We invited Ockham, Kimberley Arts Council, Kimberley District Chamber of Commerce, the Trail Society, RCR, Tourism Kimberley. And then there were a couple of members of city staff that sat in on this as well. Jasmine was really instrumental in getting this done. She led a lot of the process with the AWG. So I'd just like to thank her for her involvement. Wouldn't have moved forward without her. So in working with that group, we designated the projects through I guess a series of discussions. We had a couple of meetings with the AWG, and then the next step in the process was to send those projects off to the staff with the Resort Municipality Initiative Program. They reviewed the projects, and there was some back and forth. They approved some of the projects, some of them they didn't. The ones that made it through that process were incorporated into the resort development strategy. That entire document was sent back to the province. They subsequently approved that a couple of weeks ago. So we sent that out to the AWG just for their information, and it's now back before council for consideration of approval before we can actually go ahead and spend any of the money. I won't go through the projects in detail, but if council would like to has any questions on any of them or all of them, I'd be happy to answer.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Council, any questions with regard to the report? Go ahead, Councillor Cairns.
Thanks, Jim. And just mention, it'd be great to see the nature park and the Nordic Center on the AWG, if that were a possibility moving forward. And yeah, just a comment that I had made just a little bit earlier around, their importance to our outdoor recreation tourism economy. And a note around the August 27th Trails Roundtable that Tourism Kimberley hosted, and metrics were presented that showed that trail use is exploding, and the need for signage in particular around interpretation, education on our trail systems. So this could be a really, I see interpretation is noted in the RDS, and so it'd be great to include those groups to speak to those. Just a comment.
Right. Thank you for that feedback. Further? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Wow. I think this is the longest meeting that I've chaired in 10 years, 11 years. Lots of stuff to go through tonight. Thanks, Council, for yeah, I'm getting there. Yeah, that's okay. For attention to all of the items tonight, because they're all very important. We still have correspondence to receive. A couple of informational items. Could I have a mover to receive? Councillor Roberts, thank you. And Councillor McBain, seconds. Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, we have yet an item to deal with in camera this evening, so I need a motion to move in camera. Councillor McGuire, thank you. And Councillor Dunneback, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, you bet.